All right, so this is student work for inflation and deflation. This is a really small uh, unit or section. Um, you definitely need to understand what the simple quantity theory of money is, and this equal sign means that whatever is here for money supply and velocity, it has to equal price and quantity. So if M goes up, money supply goes up, then P or Q have to do the same thing in order for it to stay the same. Okay, it's important to understand that, and this is the actual formula that people use to figure out what are the causes of inflation. Is it any of these things? But at the same time, we also have another uh, formula that we have to use, which is the inflation rate or deflation rate. They use the same numbers. So you're going to take CPI from the latter year, subtract that from the CPI of the earlier year, divide the results of that by the CPI of the earlier year, and then take the results of that, and then multiply it by 100. So it's a multi-step process. Okay, so the work. I already have most of it done here, so I'll just go through this quickly. Question one says blank is an increase in the price level or the average level of prices. Well, if it's an increase, that represents inflation. This says decrease in the price level, so that's a deflation. Now, questions 3 through 6 are asking you to use the inflation rate or deflation rate formula. Okay, so you're going to take the CPI of that's in question 3, so the latter year 52.1 and the earlier year 46.6. Okay, so it's latter year subtracted from earlier year. So quickly, let me show you. You take 52.1, you subtract that from 46.6, you get 5.5. You then divide that by 46.6. Why? Because that's the formula tells you to do. Use the earlier one. You get 0.118. That is not what I need though, because I have to take my results here, multiply them by 100, and I get 11.8. Notice this though in your questions. It'll say, not always, but if it does say this, then you have to do this. Round answers to the nearest tenth of a percent. So 11.8. So this is 11.8. If it's a positive number, it's inflation. If it's a negative number, it's deflation. Okay. When you take these two numbers, 23.5 subtracted from 24, you're going to get a negative number. Okay. And that's why you get deflation. All right. Question 7 says, according to the simple quantity theory of money, what causes inflation? Then explain. Okay. So let's see, where's it at? I think it's 15. So 15 gives you the answer to the simple quantity theory of money predicts that changes in the price level will be strictly proportional to the changes in the money supply. So that's the second answer. That's the explanation part, right? But this is asking you like what causes the inflation. So you can copy and paste that part of your answer from 15 and I'm fine with that. But this is asking you what are the causes. Now, if you don't understand what the causes are, just look at the formula. What does M times V equals P times Q? Well, M is the money supply, V is the velocity, and Q is the quantity of output. So that's the other part that you're missing in this answer is these are the things, money supply, velocity, price level, and quantity of output. These are the things that cause inflation. And then this is your explanation. So make sure you have that, okay? Get rid of this part. All right. Question 8. At first glance, deflation would seem to be a positive occurrence for an economy. Why is deflation often destructive to an economy? Well, if you are paying attention, question 6, it says in 1930 the CPI was 17.1 and in 1931 the CPI was 15.9. Percentage change was negative 7%, and that was deflation. And these are actual numbers too, by the way, historically accurate. So this is the Great Depression. We have deflation. What was the number one problem during the Depression? Unemployment. Okay, so question 8, the way you would answer it is that not all the prices are going to fall at the same time. They don't fall at the same rate, right? It isn't instantaneous like the theory predicts. There's always a lag in this. But if you want to justify your answer, you put in here like the consumers are going to see that the price of goods and services are decreasing. And that's an indicator for them if they have the willingness and the ability to go and buy those things. At the same time, though, suppliers have to replenish those goods and services that people are buying. However, if the price that the producers have to purchase the raw materials in order to make those goods and services has not yet come down, they face a dilemma, which is wait for the prices to come down, continue to pay the people that work for you, which means you're losing money, or you can lay off your workers, right? Wait for the prices to come down, then hire your workers back and then make the product, or you can go out of business. Okay, so that's the answer to why is deflation a bad thing. All right, so 9 and 10 are about inflation and deflation, and then how it affects savers. So Jennifer is going to put $1,000 into a savings account on January 1st that gives her 4% interest. The inflation rate for that year, that the same year she puts her money into the bank, doesn't touch it, is at 2%. So on December 31st, will Jennifer's purchasing power have increased or decreased? And then justify your answer. Well, it's pretty obvious here, right? She's got $1,000. She's earning 4%. Inflation is 2%. She's still in a positive number. Is she going to make 4% interest? No, not when it's adjusted for inflation. She's only making 2%. But at the end of the year, Jennifer has an increased buying power because her $1,000 is still worth 2% more than what the inflation rate is. So good for Jennifer. Jerry, on January 1st, also puts $1,000 in the savings account, and it's also earning 4% as well. Okay. However, where Jerry lives, the inflation rate has increased to 6%. So on December 31st, will Jerry's purchasing power have increased or decreased? Justify your answer. Well, both Jennifer and Jerry have made the same amount of interest, 4%. The difference between these two is for Jennifer, the inflation rate only rose 2%. So she was still able to stay 2 percentage points ahead of the inflation rate. So she made money. However, Jerry is unlucky. He is 2 percentage points under the inflation rate. So Jerry is actually has decreased purchasing power. And you can look at the math. I mean, 1,000 times 4%, right? Then you take 1,000 times 6%. Which one is greater? This one. How much has he lost? Jerry's lost 2% of his money. Okay, he still has his original $1,000, but it's the purchasing power has gone down by 2%. All right, our good old graphs. So this says in each of the questions, 11 and 214, an event has occurred that will affect aggregate demand or aggregate supply. So you got to remember what are the things that will shift supply or shift demand. And then on the graph, you're going to illustrate the shift in either the AD curve or the AS curve. Remember, AD stands for aggregate demand and AS for aggregate supply. So it's like in total. And then you're going to fill in the blanks in the statement below the graph with the correct answer. Note, it says identify if it's inflation or deflation that occurs as either demand side or supply side. All right. So the Fed increases the money supply. Remember this back here. Okay. So this side, the money supply, has increased. So if you're confused about this, let's go over this and think about this. When we talked about supply, we talked about these two things, price and quantity, right? So this is the supply side. This is the demand side. So since money supply has gone up, we're going to shift. And if you guys remember, we can do that with these lines. So this shifts, okay? You can go like this if you'd like with an arrow. So aggregate demand has shifted to the right. So I got to come in here and I got to fill this in. And this is A and D because it's aggregate demand. It is shifted to the, well, hopefully you know your difference between your right and your left, right? So it's right. And then the price level, so this is where price was, and then this is where price is. So what has it done? It's risen, increased, whatever you want to say. I'm going to put increased. And then blank has occurred. So remember, this is where you would answer, is it demand or supply side? And is it inflation or deflation? Well, this is increased, okay? Move to the left. And since it's aggregate demand, this is demand side inflation has occurred. All right. And you know, these assignments are so very creative. So like if 11 is a shift to the left in demand, 12 is the exact opposite, right? So this one is a shift. It says the Fed decreases the money supply. So now we've got what looks like this, and I'm going to go ahead and do the arrows again because I like them. You're not required to do that, but I like it. Okay, so it shifts to the left. So it's still what it was before, meaning aggregate demand. So this is AD. This is left. What's happened to my price? It's decreased. All right. And then since this is still aggregate demand, what kind is this? And it's not inflation because we're moving towards zero. So this is going to be demand side deflation. Okay. So boom, there we go. And if this was aggregate demand, you guys, what do you think this is? Very good, aggregate supply. So it says a drought destroys crops across the Midwest section of the United States. Remember, weather was one of our shifters, so this is AS. And is it going to cause it to shift to the left or to the right? So what we've got here is a natural disaster, right? A drought, that's not a good thing, that's a bad thing. So we are going to shift to the left. So I had to fill the rest of this out. So left. What's happened to my price? This was where my price was. This is where my price is. So price has increased. And so aggregate supply, so this is going to be supply side. And then we have to figure this out. Is it deflation or inflation? Well, the price has gone up, so it's inflation. All right. New technology makes it possible to produce more goods and services with existing resources. So first thing we want to do is we want to indicate where the shift is. So technology is one of our shifters. And in this case, it's going to shift my aggregate supply to the right. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to put in AS because this is aggregate supply. And it's shifted to the right because we're moving away from zero. And what happens to my price level? My price actually drops, right? So this is going to, price level declines, drops, whatever. And then what is occurring? Is it inflation or deflation? Okay. And again, since the price is decreasing, this would be supply side deflation. All right, and that's it. Okay. Don't forget, you want to click export, download. You want to click your Google Drive. It's going to export it back to your into Classroom. If I click on my assignment, this should be blank, which that's good. Now if I refresh my page, it should have all my work on there. Okay, which it does. I didn't actually write anything in there for this assignment. I spoke it, but I didn't say it. All right, so let's assume that you can't get it turned in this way. For whatever reason, it's jacked up. It's not working. Don't forget, you can always click this. You can download it to your computer. It's going to be right here. You can click Add. It's a file. You drag that over there. Click Upload. And wait for it to upload. And then you just click Turn In. Let's make sure stuff's on there. Okay, good. Turn in. Bam. Okay, so that's student work for inflation and deflation. Thanks, guys.